one thing I'll never forget, with about a minute to go, tears are still flowing down my face. I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I get a tap on my shoulder and I'm shocked. I look behind me. It's Jason's mother. She's bawling her eyes out and she whispers in my ear, "Coach, this is the best gift you could ever give my son. What would you have done?"
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. Today, we're diving into the remarkable journey of Coach Jim Johnson, whose 3-decade basketball coaching career transformed from turning around losing programs to turning around organizational cultures. Now, you may have heard of Coach Jim's decision to let his autistic team manager, Jason J. McElwain, on the court to play in the final minutes of his last game as a senior. Well, that moment created a global phenomenon, leading to features in ESPN, People Magazine, Sports Illustrated, just to name a few. Today, Coach Johnson combines his practical championship building experience with over 1,000 books of research and so much more to deliver his 7 keys to leadership. Join us as Coach Jim reveals how the same principles that create winning teams on the court can develop champions in any industry.
Coach Jim, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Well, thank you, Michael and Tanya. I'm looking forward to it.
We are too. We are fresh out of the huddle.
That's right.
We're ready to attack this game. We're ready to do this.
Well, I know that as we're listening here, I got to give a shout out to my dad. You know, for those people out there in the audience, some may know, some may not. You know, my dad, I wrote his memoir about 3 years ago, and it's called The Raising of a Rebel. And my dad was actually ranked 7th in the state of Georgia his senior year in playing basketball, and averaged 31 points a game with no 3-point lines back in 1966, I might add, right? And so I want to dedicate this episode to my dad because I know he is going to be beside himself when he understands that we have Coach Jim on the line today. So hats off to you, Dad, and Coach Jim. Let's get to your story. All right.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about a background, Coach Jim, like how you basketball, why basketball, like what led you to that, and then we can parlay that into what you're doing today.
Well, I could certainly make a quick connection with Tanya because my dad was my high school basketball coach and he was my hero growing up. And of course, when I was in high school, I wanted to be an NBA player. That didn't quite work out. But after I realized that was not the way I could go, I wanted to stay in the game of basketball and be a teacher and a coach like my dad. The only thing I always kidded him because he left coaching to get into administration. I had 3 younger brothers and didn't have the privilege to play for him. So that's what really launched me. And I got a head coaching job in a high school about 20 minutes where I grew up at 25 years old. And I was really excited. I had been a fairly successful junior varsity coach. And of course, I did such a great job that first year. I led that team to 17 consecutive, yes, you guessed it, losses. And they decided not to renew my contract. In fact, someone might call that being fired. And it was a really humbling start to my career. But I just really wanted to prove it was a great eye opener for an arrogant 25-year-old that I had a lot to learn. And what I started to do is really focus on how I could be a better leader of myself and how I could be a better leader of young people. I was a boys basketball coach. And so I got another opportunity after I got mentored by a junior college coach for 1 year. His name was Bill Van Gundy. And for those that follow basketball, yes, his 2 sons, Jeff and Stan, were head coaches in the NBA. Certainly not when I met Coach Van Gundy, but he helped me get back on my feet. But my goal was to get back into high school. And after getting another high school job, my last 27 years, came back to my hometown called Greece, a suburb of Rochester. And I went to one of the high schools. There were 3 of them. And I ended up being the head coach for the other 2, my last 27 years, 7 at one, and then 20 in my last part of my career.
Wow. That in and of itself is impressive. as a teacher and a career. And if you don't mind me asking, like, what academia did you teach? Did you have to teach a class like the school I went to? The coach also had to teach.
Yeah, I did teach. I was a physical education teacher. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Just a little side note right there. So now you've parlayed this great success and stuff. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened there? Like, tell us about JMac a little bit and what happened there.
So to give you quick context, Jason came into our program my 7th year at my final. It was called Greece Athena. And at that point in my career, I had started to be known as the coach that couldn't win the big one. We were having winning seasons pretty much every year, but we were losing in our postseason tournament. And in fact, when Jason came in as a sophomore, I had taken just 4 teams in my head coaching career to the sectional semifinals, our postseason tournament, and we lost every time. And so this young man comes into our program, and he tries out for our junior varsity. I was the varsity coach. And my JV coach came in during tryouts. He says, "Coach, we have this young man. He's very small in stature. He's not a very good basketball player. He's on the autism spectrum, and he's learning disabled. But I really want to keep him in the program." I said, "Well, really? Why is that?" And he said, "Because he has some of the keys you always talk about, and that is that he is a we over me guy. He wants to help everybody, and he loves basketball." So I said, "Great." So he served as a team manager for the JVs. And in our circumstance, I think a lot of high schools, the JV and varsity usually play back to back. So I was getting to know Jason mainly through the games because he would sit on the bench both games. On the JV game, because he was with those players all the time, he would get a tad emotional, and it always warmed my heart because one of the varsity players after the game would always go out and straighten his white shirt and black tie and get him ready. And a quick sidelight is how he got the nickname JMac is because I couldn't pronounce his last name. In fact, butchering his last name was a misdemeanor. I would have been on death row. So I went into one of his practices, and at that time, the Syracuse University, which is only about an hour and a half from us, had a player named Jerry McNamara. They called GMac, and I used that. And he loved GMac, so he embraced the nickname. And in fact, his senior year, most of the kids in school knew who JMac is, but they had no idea what his real name was. The thing that was really cool about Jason is after his sophomore year, he came to all our off-season workouts, and he really wanted to make the varsity. And I was getting to know him, and because we both loved basketball, and I was picking him up from his house. And he tries out his junior year. And by the way, his sophomore year, I took another varsity team to the sectional semifinals, and we lost again. So for the 5th time. His junior year, he doesn't make the team, but I ask him to serve as our varsity team manager, and he quickly embraces the role. In fact, at our first team meeting, I go into the meeting, he immediately raises his hand. I said, "Yes, JMac." He says, "Coach, we know you've never won a Section 5 championship." I said, "Well, thanks, Jason, for the reminder." And he said, "But this year is going to be different because we've developed this mantra. You love little slogans and quotes you give us. So the mantra is we're going to stay focused and help you win your first sectional championship." We have another good season, Jason's junior year, and we lose at the buzzer to our crosstown rival in our semifinals. And that year, I lost it at home. My wife had never seen that. But I was big, and I read Dr. Covey's book, The 7 Habits. And by that time, I developed my own personal mission statement. And my wife was a great reminder. She goes, "I don't see anything in your mission statement about winning a Section 5 championship." So she kind of straightened me out, and I went back to work. And of course, Jason did too. Between his junior and senior year, he came to all our off-season workouts. He tries out his senior year. And at this time, he's still very small in stature, 5'9", maybe 110 pounds, and he's not a very good player. And our teams were pretty talented. So when I brought him in the office his senior year during tryouts, I said, "Jason, I've got some good news and some bad news." And he looks at me, "Coach, give me the bad news." And I said, "Well, unfortunately, you're not quite good enough to make the team." And this time he was visibly disappointed. I said, "But I do have some good news." And his head immediately popped up, and I said, "Well, what do you got in mind?" He says, "I'm going to give you a uniform for our final home game where we honor the seniors and hopefully get you in the game." And he was pretty excited about the uniform idea. In fact, I kid people that periodically he would ask me about the uniform. And of course, I define periodically as about every other day. He was pretty upset. Well, the interesting thing is that season we were expected to be very good, and we won our first 2 games, and then we had an implosion. Adversity hit. It's a long story, but the bottom line, I wrote a book about it where we talk all about it called A Coach and a Miracle. And our season really went backwards. We lost 3 of our next 5 games because we had so much internal strife. For the listeners, think of, if you've ever been on a team that didn't get along, do you get out most potential? No, we didn't do it. But the turning point is we played in a Christmas tournament at a school called Fairport. And they were really good that year. And we both won in the opening round, but they beat a team by like 40 points that we had barely beaten 2 weeks earlier. So the next day I brought him in for a short practice because it was during Christmas break, called a shoot around. And normally we get out basketballs and we go over some plays and get ready for the game, but I knew that was not going to help. So I tried to give him a little inspiration, told him about J-Mac. He's never been able to play, but look at his passion. But the best thing I did, and the leadership key I want to share to you and the listeners, is I became vulnerable. I said, guys, I don't have the answers, but you do. And you got to be willing to open up. And fortunately, one player started to say something. And then by the end of the practice, we never had brought a basketball out. Yet I could see they felt much better because they felt like they were being heard. And that night it manifested. We played a great game against Fairport. We didn't win, but we lost in overtime. And that really spurred us. We won 8 out of our next 9 games going into senior night. Senior night was on February 15th. I gave J-Mac his first jersey. It was number 52. It was way too big. He didn't care. In fact, there was a rumor going around that he slept in it for 2 straight nights.
Aw.
So it was pretty fired up. Well, senior night, just for your listeners, is the way we honored is we would bring all the senior players and cheerleaders out before the game and the parents, and to see J-Mac embrace his parents in uniform instead of his white shirt and black tie is a memory I will always cherish. Well, the game begins, and my thoughts were I wanted to get Jason in, but I knew I couldn't put him in until I got everybody else in. And I wanted to see if he could score a basket. So with just over 4 minutes to go in the game, I pointed to him. He nearly ran on the court. He was so excited. And then what happened next, we had a really good student body following. They called themselves the 6 Man. And what Jason and I didn't know is one of the parents had made these pictures of Jason's face and put them on paint sticks like a placard. And when Jason entered the court for the first time, they gave him a standing ovation. They showed all those placards. Well, normally I'm not going to cry at a basketball game, but I did. They really touched my heart with how they greeted him. And I sat down and tears started to flow down my face. Now the game begins. For the first time, Jason's in a varsity basketball game. The first time he touches the ball, he has a 3-pointer from the right corner. He lets it go. The whole crowd stands up. He misses by like 6 feet. And I kid people, I know you're not supposed to pray in the public schools, but I was praying, dear God, please help me get 1 basket. Next possession, he has a much shorter shot. And this time it hits the backboard, hits the rim, and falls out. And the crowd groans. I'm thinking, all right, God's starting to listen. We're getting closer. Third possession, he has another 3, and it goes in. And the place just explodes.
Oh, I bet.
Listen, we pulled the ESPN footage of that. Coach Jim, and it made me so emotional to watch that. Yeah. It was unbelievable. Please carry on.
Yeah. So it was just that I'm thinking to myself, God must be a basketball fan. Not only has Jason scored, he's got a 3-pointer. I can't any better than this. Well, I got to fast forward to give everybody context. 6 months after that, Jason's at the ESPY Awards. He's up for the greatest sports moment of the year. And his idol was the late Kobe Bryant. And I kid you not, Kobe Bryant is one of the other finalists. He had scored 81 points in an NBA game for the Lakers that year. So he's up for the same award as J-Mac, and J-Mac beats his idol and beats him out for the ESPY. Well, how's he do that? He doesn't just make 1 3. He comes down, he makes another 3. And then he makes a couple and he misses a couple. And the one thing I'll never forget, with about a minute to go, tears are still flowing down my face. I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I get a tap on my shoulder and I'm shocked. I look behind me. It's Jason's mother. She's bawling her eyes out and she whispers in my ear, Coach, this is the best gift you could ever give my son. Oh. What would you have done? I cried harder. It was
gosh, yeah.
And then this is how the game ends. Spencerport, our opponent, I want to give kudos to their players and their coach. They score with about 10 seconds to go, and our player takes it about a bounce. He usually threw it to our point guard, but he throws it to J-Mac, and J-Mac's dribbling down the court, and I'm thinking they're going to just let him go in for a layup. Oh, no, he pulls up like 2 feet behind the arc, almost an NBA three. I'm thinking, Jason, don't shoot from there. You're going to ruin the moment. He launches a rainbow. Swish.
Oh, wow.
I see, and it was like the movie Rudy. The whole crowd ran on the floor, and our players put him up on their shoulders. And at this point, I had no idea how many points he had scored. And our public address announcer comes on and says, the leading scorer for Greece Athena tonight, J-Mac, with 20 points, including 6 3-pointers. So it was truly remarkable.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. It was such an emotional moment for me to watch that ESPN footage. It was insane, and that story is just unrivaled. And what happened from there is all the media coverage and exposure. Tell us how that felt.
That was crazy because we did get some local media. One of our TV channels called us, and they borrowed the video. The reason for that is Jason's speech pathologist actually called one of the TV stations, because I wasn't a promoter, and we didn't have any media there. But when they showed it, then all the local TV stations came to the school the next day, and we did interviews. But that's where I thought it was ending. And then Monday morning, I'm going to practice because we were off from school and we were in our postseason tournament. And CBS Evening News calls the house, which they normally don't call. And they did a story. And then that next week, it was crazy. We were on Good Morning America, ESPN, CNN. It was wild. We ended up going to Oprah. But I do want to give you one little thing that's amazing. Talk about the we over me. Jason, after that game, he's got to go back and be our team manager because he had to play in 6 regular season games. And yet with his guidance, because he was so into the team, we ended up winning our first Section 5 championship in front of a sold-out crowd of about 10,000. So that's just a great leadership lesson is, whatever your role is, be the best you can be. And Jason was a great example of that.
We do not have the time to unpack all that we really want to know out of you. But we're going to take a little extra, and the audience hopefully will forgive us because obviously that in and of itself, like you said, God must be. I already figured he was a basketball player. So all of that works out really wonderful or whatnot. But your leadership had to have been there to head into that. And then post that, you've done so much to help teams, organizations, and probably individuals too, in leadership on so many of those things that you learned from studying 1,000 books, 2,000 hours worth of leadership content. Right. You want to tell us a little bit what you were already on that trajectory, right? Because something that stuck out to me was your vulnerability. When you said to the team, you're like, here they are looking to the coach. Coach tells what to do, how we're going to win this, and then you're bold enough and big enough to say, I don't have the answer. Y'all have the answer. You want to tell us about that leadership principle?
Well, that was one of my big transitions when I really started to study about leadership and learned about servant leadership. Is the fact that you got to, I kid leaders that you got to be the CQA, the chief question asker. And that's something I changed. I had meetings with my leadership team, which was my captains every week. And I used to do it all based on my needs. And then I flipped it. I started just asking questions like, how's the team chemistry? How can I best coach you this week? Is there anybody on the team that's really hurting that we need some extra support? And really empowering my players was really important. And the other thing I learned between empowering my staff and my players is to get the best answers in leadership, you got to find and listen to other people, because often the best answer is not from you. It's from someone that you learn from, or listen to. And, when I think that's a big transition, because as leaders, we all have an ego, but if you really want to find the best answer, it's often not your answer, but seeking that best answer is really where you have to be better with asking questions and being a better listener.
I love that one. I love that one a lot. as somebody, just to be vulnerable with the crowd, and you as somebody who's worked as an entrepreneur all his life and attempted to build these teams over the years or whatnot, I've seen several businesses and several teams where we were not able to come together to be as successful as I thought we could have been and should have been in the vision that I saw. But several of those people that were a part of that went on to be highly successful in their own right. Effectively in the same business and in the same industry in a lot of ways. And I can't help but look back at that and think, that problem was not with them. That problem was with me. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate that. That speaks to me a lot as a head of a company, and always trying. I'm sure it does many of the audience too.
Right.
What consistent I'm sorry, I'm stealing all the questions. What consistent,
take it away.
What consistent patterns did you identify in the struggling teams? How do these same patterns show up in organizations?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I challenge, I have these 7 leadership keys, but one we'll just really focus in on is trust. Okay. When I often will ask my audiences, I used to ask my team, is important for us to build trust. And of course, it's always 100%. But what I challenge leaders is, do you have an intentional trust plan on how you're going to build trust? And we have 3 points to our trust plan. I'll share them with you just to give you an idea. But the first one was that we had to align our words and actions, that we had to be consistent. So if I said we were going to practice at 6 o'clock in the morning, I had to be there early because that was one of our non-negotiables, being on time. I had to set the model. So getting clarity of your expectations, but then aligning your words and actions. How many times do we see a leader say one thing and do completely the opposite? And that breaks trust. Number 2 is, I think you have to build a foundation on telling each other the truth. Now, I think that's both an art and science, because sometimes as you get to know, because I always kid leaders, the 3 R's in leadership is relationships, relationships, relationships. And to build those, then you got to be willing to share and get to know them. So there are some players I could call out in front of the whole team and was helpful for all. There's others that could not handle that. So that was also done behind closed doors, but I was still sharing the truth, and I expected them in return. And the third thing, because I took over 4 programs that weren't very good, as you mentioned, or I mentioned, the first one didn't go well, but the next 3 did. And the biggest thing is I realized that I had to catch people doing right and praise them specifically, because as you build that trust, then you can do the other part, which is important in leadership, and that's be able to correct, but you're correcting behavior and not criticizing the person.
Yes, very big.
Oh, yes. I love those 3. And, Coach Jim, when you're talking about, an organization and aligning everybody and building that foundation of telling the truth, catching, people doing right, those things are so important, not just in an organization, but you also speak to middle school, high school, and college students, right?
Right.
How does that align with your organizational work as well?
It depends on, because I have some other presentations. I do more usually with students. My presentation on dreams really do come true, and try to inspire them and give them some context with Jason's story and giving them some tangible things. But, the big thing that I really, to answer your question specifically, as a leader, I always kid people that the first person you got to lead is yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you can't lead yourself well, then it's very hard to lead others. And so that's something that I think, I was listening to one of your podcasts about a leadership director, and he was talking about the mission. Okay, and how big the mission is. So that's something we really ingrained in our players. I have my own personal mission statement that I tried to live by each day. And then our team mission was to create winners on and off the court. And one of the things I encourage leaders is to be the CRO, the Chief Reminding Officer. And what I mean by that is that you got to constantly be sharing what is the mission. And so our players understood the mission, but we defined what is it to be a winner on the court. Yes, winning on the scoreboard was part of that, but it's also being a great teammate. It's also being someone that can handle adversity. Off the court, it's being the best student you can be, being someone that's going to contribute positively to our community. So we were really trying to give them clear expectations of that mission, because the mission's got to be bigger than yourself. And it's got to be bigger than winning games and coaching. It's got to be bigger than winning profit, although those are both important. In coaching, if you don't win enough, you're not going to stay around. And if you don't have profit in business, you're not going to stay around. But what my study of all great organizations is that they have a mission bigger than themselves that leads to building those core values and building that culture to build that consistency so that you're all on the same page, rowing the boat for the same goals.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Can I ask you a nuts and bolts question here?
Sure.
So you seem like the type that was incorporated into basketball practice. What was it not? Did you sit the team down? Did y'all have these discussions as a part of practice? And you prioritize it as much as passing layups and learning plays?
Yeah, my job, I felt, is I wanted to help these young people be successful on and off the court. So because of that, we were really trying to always share. I know I'm using a lot of acronyms, but the CST, the chief storyteller, is that I shared a lot of stories. As we developed a real good program, I would share stories of both warnings and examples, both of what's happened in our program and also outside of, like maybe examples of NBA players. I would bring up an example of a player. He's a really good player, but his team never wins. Why is that? We would have a discussion about that. The other thing that I did that I learned that I think was really powerful is we had a theme every week. So the theme might be work ethic or attitude. And then we would give a quote every day. Like, for example, attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? And then we would talk about those types of things day in and day out. So yes, we were always talking about, those things and teaching during practice and post meetings and pre-meetings and pre-game meetings. We're always still trying to talk about our values and our mission.
And did you feel, did you feel more times that nobody heard you, or did you? Give us a little insight into Coach Jim. Like, were there times that you're like, well, I just gave that really, rah-rah-ree speech right there, told them that story, and like all I heard was crickets. Did you have to swallow that back a good bit?
Absolutely. And so a couple things, and that's what I encourage leaders, and that's why they bring me in, because often, I would bring outside voices in to share messages as well. So that, but at the same time, the one thing I learned about communication is you can't over communicate. You got to be constantly reminding them and living and sharing. And if you do that, then you know what, there's definitely days I hit myself on the head and I'm like, did they really understand what's going on here? They are young people. I mean, I was working with 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But that's the thing is, boy, when they come together and do something special together, there's nothing like it. So,
well, and I'm quite certain that over your tenure of 3 decades, that you had plenty of them that came back and articulated just how powerful your influence on them were and shaping their lives. And you might have thought, man, I didn't think you were listening that whole time.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story that does make me feel good, because yes, I've been fortunate to have a lot of players come back and in fact, I just had lunch with a player that I coached like 40 years ago. So that was pretty cool. He just came back into town. But the one, so my last year in coaching was in 2016. I had a guy that was a pretty good player. He ended up playing University of Vermont, but he ended up playing the NBA for 2 years. He's actually playing over in Europe now, but he after one of the years he was in the NBA, came back to our hometown, and I had lunch with him, my assistant coach that took over for me. And he told, it was something that touched my heart deeply. He said, he was talking to my assistant, Coach Setzer. He says, Coach Setzer, what I admired most about Coach Johnson is I know he cared more about me as a person than he did as a basketball player. And then that really touched my heart. So, because that's what I was trying to do. I'm not sure I always did it well, but that was the whole idea.
That's huge.
It is. It is.
Huge.
And so many things about this conversation today touch our hearts, and I know it'll touch the hearts of people who are listening. And Coach Jim, we do something at the end of most of our podcast episodes where we pull out 3 takeaways. I literally have about 12 here.
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to read them all. Yes. Okay. So let's just take our turn here. We're going to read all of these things that we've learned from you today. And this is a first ever, by the way, that we've ever had this many takeaways. And I don't think I wrote them all down.
No.
So if you see me dodging my eyes away from here, that's down to the keyboard to try to keep up with all these awesome things we're learning from Coach Jim today. So we're going to rattle down through these, and then we're going to come back to you with one final question.
Sure.
All right. Go for it.
We really like the we over me.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it's great.
Being vulnerable is a key. Vulnerability is something that most leaders find very difficult to do. And I couldn't agree with you more that that's a huge key.
Yeah. Huge new. I really love this. Build trust. Do you have an intentional trust plan?
Yes.
That's brand new to that thought process.
Yes.
Have a plan for that.
And I think, too, why you have lunches with people 40 years later that used to be your players, your mission was to create winners on and off the court.
Yep. And of course, I love Chief Reminding Officer. I'm going to change my own title for my own company because I do feel like that. And that gives that a title instead of a chore. I like that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a totally different reason, but what the heck? It's great. All right. So a theme every week. Love this because it keeps people's attention on something positive, and it's constantly changing and constantly positive.
And of course, the mission is being bigger than yourself. Yeah. And for each person to apply that is awesome. And it's an awesome way to put that. So
align your words with your actions. As Michael talks about all the time, we have to connect our hearts with our heads, right? The head may know something, the heart may not feel it all the way, right? Connecting those two is really a lot like aligning your words and your actions.
Build a foundation on telling each other the truth. That's so vital. Without judgment, everybody needs to be able to have a say so.
All right. Final one for today, but certainly not the final. We could go on and on. Catch people doing right. Catch people. We don't do that enough. I know I don't, right? I catch all the things that go wrong, but and we need to catch more of the right.
And I got another one I got to throw out. Okay. So attitudes are contagious. Yes. Is yours worth catching? Great, fantastic. Yes. And instantly I felt guilty when you said that, Coach Johnson, because my attitude isn't worth catching a lot. So I got to work on making my attitude contagious, and I'm going to do that.
Oh, you're going to hold us accountable for months here. All right. Well, Coach Jim, I do want to ask you this, tell people how they can learn more, especially if they're interested in their organization working with you to better themselves and build a mission bigger than themselves.
Sure. So my website's probably best. I'm big on social media, so I add Coach Jim Johnson, but so I'm on, Twitter, X, and LinkedIn, and Instagram, and Facebook. And then my website is CoachJimJohnson.com. We do have a free weekly blog and also a free monthly newsletter. I do a podcast myself with two others to help young and emerging leaders after getting fired. It's called the Limitless Leadership Lounge, where we've interviewed great leaders from all over the world. So we've done that. And I have a couple books. I have Lessons from Thought Leaders that I have a chapter in, and then the book I mentioned earlier called A Coach in a Miracle that are both on our site as well. And I do have a lady I work with. So if we can help you in any way, please feel free to reach out, and we'll do the best we can to help you become a better leader and inspire others.
Well, I would like to say, folks, if you've learned as much as I have today, which has been a lot, then I encourage you reach out to Coach Jim, see what he has to offer to help you personally and also in your organizations. I'm quite certain the value has just barely been touched.
What a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. And thank you so much for taking time to do that with us, Coach Jim.
Oh, it was an honor and a great pleasure. And thanks so much. And I look forward to continue our conversation as we move forward.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.